Hello, and welcome again to Rough Cut. I'm Sky Dylan-Robbins, founder of the Vecchio Consortium, your global nonfiction video and film community. Remember, y'all, that now on the podcast, we are hearing from you, the brilliant creators within our expanding and big global network. By the way, if you have an episode that you want to pitch, send us a note. The email is in the show notes. So this time, we are hearing from the one and only Quincy Ledbetter and Mito Habe-Evans. Quincy goes way back with VC, and he and Mito work together at the small but very mighty video department at NPR, where Mito oversees the film team. Quincy and Mito dive deep into the very hard art of how to build good teams. Most of us within these creative industries, after all, know that a strong team with excellent dynamics is absolutely the backbone of success, right? I mean, good teams make good work. So let's keep striving for that and learn from these two in this really great episode. I'm popping it over to Quincy, and this is Rough Cut.
Hello, everyone. I'm Quincy Ledbetter, and I'm hosting this episode of Rough Cut. Joining me today is Mito Habe-Evans. Mito, welcome.
Thank you, Quincy. I'm very
so
happy
glad
to be
you're
here.
Look at us being professionals.
I know. What is this?
Yeah. The VC asked me who I wanted to talk to, and of all the people I know, I told you this, but of all the people I know in media, you were the one I was the most excited about because, I figured we would have a shared aversion to philosophizing about what is media, and the landscape, you know what I'm saying? So I really appreciate you doing this.
Yeah.
For background for the listener, you and I worked together in 2016 for just a few weeks, about 6 weeks at NPR while I was there, and over the years, a freelance gig here and there. And you are the common denominator of some of the best working environments and most creative projects I've ever had the privilege of being a part of. So
Wow.
I wanted to talk to you about that and about not just going with the status quo, but really taking the work and what we do to the next level. So
That's so cool. Wow. Making me blush. Um,
of course.
yeah, I can't believe that it was only like 6 weeks that we worked together officially at NPR.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I feel like it was a good 6 weeks, Quincy. And
Yeah.
I feel like the projects we worked on since then have been it's been like really good, solid collaboration. So I feel like,
Yeah,
it's been good.
for sure.
Yeah.
For the listener, outside of what I just said, give us a quick, short download of your path to video, because
Oh,
to
yeah.
my understanding, you started out you were a neuroscientist. You started out studying neuroscience. Yeah.
It sounds like really impressive. Like I was like doing
And that's why
brain
I said it.
surgery.
Yeah, that's why I said it. I was like, yo,
Yeah.
she's a neuroscientist.
Yeah. Somehow that like the status of like neuro elevates it. I majored in molecular and cell biology with an emphasis in neurobiology, which I guess doesn't make it sound like less it somehow it just whatever. It's nerdier. I was doing like lab work.
Yeah.
I love science. I still do. I just don't have the discipline and the attention span to like dedicate my life to studying the activities of one protein for like over a year. Like I love like learning, about like the big picture of things, what does it say about us though? So yeah, I left, I worked in science for a little bit after that. And then I like really loved photojournalism, and I don't think I like understood until like late in my college career that like that was like an actual thing you could go do. And so I applied to J School in Missouri for photojournalism, and they like didn't care for grad school that you don't have like a undergrad in anything. So it's just a total career change jump, and it like I haven't looked back. It's been great. Like and then, so I started with photo, and then I got an internship at NPR. And I guess I'm like so far an NPR lifer, I don't know, but I've been there since. But like the role has like shifted a lot from like coming in doing like photo and like being a photo editor kind of, to
Right.
doing more video, and then like starting a video team and going from primarily music video and music video, performance video, to music documentary, to like news or just general, NPR coverage for video. And then
Yeah.
now like, editing, being an editor for like TikTok, other things beyond.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. One of the you mentioned, that you are sort of like an NPR lifer and you learned how to build teams. And that's mainly what I wanted to talk to you about, is because like you're very good at building teams. And what is your approach to building a team? Like, how do you interview people? How do you decide to hire them? What sort of things outside of ability are you looking for?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I'll say that like half of it is like building, acquiring the right mix of people. But I think a lot of it is work that happens on the back end of just like fostering culture and like making sure you have a healthy, and that I have a lot of help with, primarily from like Becky Lettenberger and Nick Michael, who I work closely with in running, in like the video leadership side of it. But yeah, I think early on, I guess I was like, I hired a lot of our staff mostly through the internship program. And so what I was looking for, I mean, really at that point, it was like, how good is your portfolio? Like that's the only, I would just like look to see that there was skill set there. But yeah, beyond that, I think I've always valued, and I got this from my own boss, Keith Jenkins, who hired, uh, who liked to hire folks who had like different backgrounds and interesting backgrounds to bring in, to have like different
Mhm.
perspective, not necessarily like traditional journalism backgrounds. Like I feel like we've gotten a lot of folks that have come in from like film, you know, which has been great because I think that's like a background, that's like an education that I don't have formally. And so it's like nice to have people who like know stuff that I don't, coming in as interns, like
Yeah.
teaching me. And then I think just like, a willingness to like work hard and, you know,
Yeah.
do the work
I
that
remember
you have to do, but then also like, yeah, bring ideas.
I remember when you hired me at NPR. So I had always, before working in video, I had only had jobs. Like, I need to wear a suit to show up for this job interview and all that. And then right after I got laid off from Mashable, you hit me up because you had seen something that I did.
Yes.
And you're the first job interview I had after Mashable.
Wow.
And I don't know if you remember this. We met at like a coffee shop, and I went in there like prepped to like talk about like what I do and how I do it and my qualifications, and we just kicked it. You know what I mean? And then we talked about work a little bit, but it was such a chill conversation. And you were asking me about me and like more like less of how I do it, but why I do it. And it was sort of disarming in a good way, to a point where like at the end you were kind of like, yeah, so like if you want to work with us, then like think about it, and if you want to start, like you can pull up and start. I was like, really,
Well,
and
that's good
yeah.
context. Okay, so I got you. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, listen, like I saw the work, right? Like you had a
Right. Yeah.
unique point of view. I liked that point of view. I knew you could do it. I think once you're past that step, it is like a vibe thing. And I know that can get dangerous
Yeah.
sometimes when you're just talking about like culture fit and all that, because that can result in kind of like a uniformity of a staff. But
Hmm.
I think that these are also people that you are going to spend. So I try to like, I want to make sure there's like a good diversity of like backgrounds and experience and everything, while also just like, these are folks that you're going to be spending like every day with. And I think
Yeah.
having a kind of like a strong reason for like a passion to like be able to read a passion in it. It's like, why do you do the
Yeah.
things that you do? Like, why do you, why are you in this? Skills are learnable. I think just like having the having the drive and the flexibility, yeah,
Yeah.
to learn it, that can
Yeah.
come. But
I got, before I left working in media full time, freelance life, I was in a position where I was hiring people, and I found that when I hired someone just based on how good their work was, and I didn't like do the vibe check, it
mm-hmm.
usually didn't work out. But if I hired someone, and I carry this over into like when I make narrative film too, like when I bring somebody onto my crew or even hire an actor for something, like the work, if the work is exceptional, but the vibe is really good, then that's a good marker, because the work always has to be exceptional. That's the baseline.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But if the work is exceptional, even better than this other person, but the vibe isn't good,
Yeah,
it's not a good
I
idea to
know.
go for that person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although,
If
okay, here's where I'm gonna eat my words, because I almost did
uh,
not get my internship at NPR because the vibe was off, because I gave a terrible phone interview because it was awkward, and like I was in a car with other people on the way up,
oh
like driving somewhere, and I just gave the most stilted, awkward interview ever. We've had great people on the team where I've like not hired them a couple rounds because uh, the vibe was off and they came off a little bit like too stiff and maybe arrogant even. But then
mm,
eventually, like having gotten them on the team, I've like learned that they were just like super nervous,
right.
and they're like
Yeah.
some of the best people now.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's also like, to your point, it's also that act of being consciously disarming with like, yo, this is, you can be yourself here. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like, remember I was up for a directing gig, co-directing with someone who's like a pretty big public figure. And when we first met, I was really nervous because this is somebody that I looked up to and have been looking up to for a long time. And he was really good at like, and you could tell that this is someone who has been in that position of power for a long time and knew it, but wanted to get that out of the way. So when we met for the in person for the first time, he said, "Listen, I'm aware of the dynamic here, and I just want you to know that like what would be good for me is if we kind of like did our best to ignore it." You know what I mean? And I just want us to talk, and like that was like so welcoming. And I bring that up to say that like some people are conscious of that like interview dynamic, and we we, we are all conscious of that interview dynamic. So for the person getting interviewed, we're all taught how to interview,
Hmm.
which is like, hello person, I'm Quincy Ledbetter and
Hmm.
I'm ultra professional. And for the interviewer, being open to acknowledging that stigma and being willing to, you know, call attention to it and disarm it or ignore it for the interview, because maybe the person is acting weird for this reason. I
So
don't know
we're
if that's
supposed to
helpful,
like,
but
yeah, we're supposed to come in and pull up our chair and swing it at the opposite way and like
yeah,
be like, hey, I'm a cool
we're a
dog.
glass.
Yeah. Let's break it down. Let's talk
Yeah.
like some old friends. Hey.
One thing that you talked about before, that we've talked about before, is you were very involved in the punk scene in DC back in the day, and like the activity that you had in that culture and in that world sort of like inspired like the way you work now. Do you Can you speak to that at all, or how that experience influenced the experiences you're having now?
Yeah, totally. I I didn't grow up, but I went to high school in the suburbs of DC in Maryland, which is like incredibly wealthy and is a place where like everyone had really fancy cars and Tiffany bracelets and Coach bags and stuff that I like didn't even really like know. what they were. And then there was like, a few blocks of like middle income housing, whatever. I would walk to school. And I think in a way you like lean into like the thing that you can do. So I think I was tending towards like punk anyway. Like I think there's a contrarian in me and like an activist in me anyway, but it became like something that I like threw myself into. And punk in DC is very political, and it's also, punk in general has this like ethos of do it yourself. That is like such a core part of it. Like having young people be able to like participate and make things and do stuff is so much a heart of the punk. It's like, it doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be good. It's like you lean into the like imperfection of it as an aesthetic, and as you lean into like the bugs and make them a feature, I guess, right? At that age, just being able to like feel like we could make stuff, and then and then my more musically inclined friends were like in bands and like playing, and that's like you can do stuff when you're young, and that is like celebrated within punk rock, right? And like and that you have like control over the means of production to like do stuff, and then also to like definitely like be resourceful, but also like lean into the things that make you different.
Right. Yeah.
I think that has been extremely influential, especially at a place like NPR, where we don't have like the resources that big journalism media institutions have, like for video.
And also, just to piggyback off of what you're saying, a lot of times when you have limited resources, even that brings a team closer together. You know what I mean? Like I found, like, because when you have limited resources, an individual can't think, okay, how are we going to do this? But you kind of have to bring everybody else in and like, look, we have $10. Like, what can we do with $10? And then everyone's throwing ideas about the time that they only had $10. You know what I mean? And what they did and what they did, what this person did. And it just like brings everybody closer, really.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, definitely being in the trenches together. I don't want to like glorify it too much, because also like pay your people, and like it would be nice to have like, it would nice to not be like struggling against it all the time. And like there are ambitious things that we want to do. But yeah, I mean, I think I've had the luck at NPR of having like bosses that really do champion our work and like get us funding to do these ambitious projects when when we need to. And like huge
and the projects are
huge props to Anya Groneman and Keith Jenkins, who have like really like made video at NPR possible.
Yeah, major props. And the work is, this is a kind of a digression, but the work is consistently really cool. You know what I mean? It's just like singular and it's its own thing. And I find that a lot of times people are just doing what works for everybody else. But NPR has always been, at least for the experience that I've had with NPR and the work that I've done with you, is like, wow, I've never done this before. You know what I mean? Or I've never approached it this way. So props to you and your team for that.
Well, that's definitely like out of the limitation, right? Of like, if we can't do it, like, why do it? Why just do it? Make another video that's just like other ones about this subject, just to have it on npr.org, right? But like at the same time, it'd be great to be like having more. Like it's like we spend a lot of resources and effort to make something good, but then it's like we can only make like so many of them a year.
I got one more question for you. One more. First a statement, then a question. I've always regarded you as being, how do I do this in a way that isn't embarrassing for you? I've always regarded you as being like one of the most creative people I've encountered in media. Is it something that comes natural to you, or is it something that you're more deliberate about? Like, are you pushing yourself? Like, when you have an idea, are you pushing yourself to be like, how can I be more creative about this idea? Or does it come naturally?
I hate when people say, I don't know, I'm just this way. I guess I just am a creative, because it's like, great, good for you. Like, I'm not
Yeah.
learning anything from this. Like, yeah, no. And also just like, there is process. There's I think probably the one thing that I bring to it that feels a little more maybe just like part of who I am is like a contrarian nature. But I think that's
Gotcha.
something that you can learn and apply and also just like borrow for whatever project it is and just like take on this. Like, I like to question assumptions, absolutely. And that is something that comes from punk rock, you know?
Yeah.
And like, if you're given a project or like a prompt for something, I think like always question like what are the assumptions that are being made in this like presentation of like here's where you start, because I think
Mhm.
this can be annoying for some other people that I work with, where I like start on a project and first thing I do is like knock the legs out from under it and I'm like, let's start from the beginning, where is this all coming from? Having those assumptions, like knowing like what that does is actually it breaks open your play space of like what you
Mhm.
have, an area within which to like do things, right? Because like if you're given a prompt, you're like, it has to be this. But then if you question like why are the structural beams here? Why are the walls here? And you actually figure out, well, the real purpose is to like get this done, then you can like open your arena up a little bit so you have
Yeah.
more space to play. So that's like the first thing, is like figure out like what the real goal is. Like always find out what the goal is. Don't just take like the instruction and
Yeah.
someone else's assumption of like what you need first, right? And then I think the other thing is like I always, yeah, it's just like think about like how to stand out, how to do something differently. Anytime we have a project, I like to think, and like this is partly process that we've developed as a team, um, is, you know, to think about framing, to think about the topic, the thesis, like what is it that you actually want to say. Then the framing is like a big thing to pay attention to. And I always like to think of like what's the headline because
Yeah.
it does help clarify these things. But the framing is like the thing that you can have the most fun with, and that's like how you tell a story, right? About 9/11 or, you know, the Frederick Douglass, like 4th of July thing
Right.
that we worked on. But like
Yeah.
I always like to have a framing that has like a little bit of has a point of view and has a twist to it and is a sharp framing where you're like actually like, oh, that's an interesting, they told this story, but they told it in this way. And it sounds kind of vague, but like, I guess for example, the 9/11 thing is a good, maybe like illustrative example. You know, we're doing something for the 20th anniversary of 9/11. Like you can expect like you can identify like what you maybe expect from places, right? Or like
Right.
what the
Yeah.
most obvious kind of starting point is. But like get people to talk to and brainstorm, like, and just like throw more ideas in the pot and like just like try to match this and this and find like weird combinations of things until you get there. But
Mhm.
like, yes, like what is, and then what is like the heart that you're like trying to get to? Like what is the like thing you're trying to ultimately explore? And I think,
Yeah.
you know, we ended up, what we did was we put an
The
old
phone
like
book.
New York City telephone booth, in Brooklyn Bridge Park with the background of downtown Manhattan. Um, and we had folks who had lost people in the towers uh, come and have a conversation in that phone booth with their loved one 20 years on. Um, and that sort of came out of like, what is the idea that we want to explore? And I think for what we got to was like, what is like 9/11's impact now, or cultural impact, besides like the legacy of like all the politics and, you know, everything, all the aftermath of it. It still feels like grief. It's like a symbol. It was like a moment of collective grief. One of the things that I remember like being most impacted by when I like went to see the 9/11 memorial years back was like they have a station where you pick up phones and you like hear the voicemails of folks who
Oh.
were friends and family of people who were on some of the planes, who were like
Mhm.
calling and like, checking on them and being like, oh, I heard there's something going on, or I hope you're good. And then like progressively gets more worried. And it's just like so impactful and visceral and intimate.
Right.
And I think there's something about the
Yeah.
phone and having that like that intimate conversation that also feels very there's something about that audio that's also very like NPR, like that feels like, we have a mix of
Right.
audio, there's like an intimacy there. Creativity is an exercise, and you like the more, that's also the reason for having like more people on the team who have like different ideas, and like
Mhm.
being able to like be like, oh, I went to this thing once, or like, hey, there's something that that happens over here that's like a cool thing. Like the more that you can just like mash ideas together, the synthesis is the creativity.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
so yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you for that. And, thank you for doing this. Like, I'm so
Yeah, dude.
glad that you agreed to do this. And, I feel like we don't talk enough. You know what I mean?
We need to. I know.
Yeah. And I feel like this is a good excuse to just like kick it with the homie. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's been so great, like just working with you in the past.
Aw.
Oh, you're just such a cool collaborator. And yeah.
You too. You too. This episode of Rough Cut was hosted by me, Quincy Ledbetter, and produced by Monica Gokey, and executive produced by Dylan-Robbins and Kat Vecchio. Our original music is by Zach Wright.
Rough Cut is part of the Vecchio Consortium, which is a global creative community and organization that supports the world's nonfiction filmmakers and video journalists to tell bold stories that catalyze change. We would love for you to join our nonfiction film family, and you can learn more at videoconsortium.org.
And we love hearing from listeners. So if you would like to send us a note, you can find us on Instagram at Rough Cut Podcast, or you can send us an email at podcast@videoconsortium.org. And don't forget to rate us and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and subscribe. Thank you, and see you soon.